So my name is India Palencia. I'm running for the Lee County School Board District 6, which is just the fancy way of saying everyone in Lee County will see me on their ballot. So if you live in Lee County, I'll be on the ballot.
So tell me why you're more of an advocate in your approach.
Yeah, I approach how I'm doing this very differently because I've been a community advocate for many years. So I just come from that mindset. I see things a little differently and I approach things a little differently, a little more of an open book in a sense because of that, because I'm not afraid to just say what I think and say what's on my mind because I've been doing it for years. And I just operate under the premise that, like, if you say something in public, you shouldn't be afraid of what you've said. If you say it, stand 10 toes down on it. So
Why are you running?
Oh, that's kind of a loaded question. It was a years-long process that led me to getting fed up, is really what happened. So I mentioned I was an advocate. I got sucked into the advocacy world, like not on purpose. So I have 3 kids. They're in our public schools. At the time, my twins were very, very tiny. They were babies. But my oldest was starting, I think it was kindergarten. And we had in our community a very unsafe bus stop. The HOA had posted on the Facebook page saying, hey, we've tried to get this bus stop moved and the district's ignoring us. Can a parent call? Because they thought, well, they weren't being heard because they were like old retirees or something. So I thought, oh, sure, I'm a parent. My kid's not on the bus, but this can't be too hard. I'll just call on down there. They'll see that it's an unsafe bus stop and they'll move it. And yeah, that was a really naive view of things because I got hung up on. When I first called, I was told no and hung up on. And then I called right back. I was like, no. You don't hang up on me. And that just started like this 8-month fight with our school district to get a bus stop moved. I mean, we had media out at our community. We were at every school board meeting. We had transportation review committee hearings. We were talking to board members. We were getting, local officials to support us. We were talking to the Lee County Sheriff's Office and the Fort Myers Police Department and really just fighting this. And that's how this all started. And in going to the school board meetings, I started hearing things that were concerning, like as a parent and a community member, when you see a teacher walk down to the podium and she's weeping because she's having to go to Harry Chapin Food Bank to get food for her kids, not her, she's going without because she can't afford to put food on the table. It makes you go, what's going on? Like, what is happening? And my background, so I worked for telecommunications, retail for 10 years. I ran, retail locations on the East Coast of Florida, multi-million-dollar business. So my first instinct was to say, well, let me look at their budget and see what's happening. And I'll make some suggestions and maybe they'll hear those suggestions and make some changes. Well, there was no budget to be found. Yeah, so you can find budgets, like line item budgets for the schools. But if you wanted to see a line item budget for the district, Godspeed. It's not there. You can't drill down and see how much they're spending on cell phone service or pens or anything like that. Can't find it. You'll find chunked out budgets. So that was like my big red flag. So I knew at that point that I needed to pay closer attention. And that's how I got on the advocacy road. What caused me to decide to finally run is I had been told for years, oh, you should run for office. And I would joke and go, no, crazy people do that. And I'm not crazy. I just go to the board meetings and I talk about what they should change. And I would be frustrated. And they had gone from 2 meetings a month down to 1. So my 3 minutes had been more like 2 minutes if I was lucky, and 1 minute in most cases to say what you had to say. And there was one meeting in particular. And I went up to this podium to speak. And I was fighting against them spending money on lobbyists, right? Because when you're in debt, buy a lobbyist, right? So I went up there and I looked up at the dais while I was talking and it looked like a board member was asleep. There were 2 that were like talking to each other. I don't know what about. The rest were on their phone. There were only 2 people looking up at me. It was Debbie Jordan and Melissa Giovanelli. And everybody else was like ignoring it. And it wasn't just me. It was everyone who got up to speak. And I was like, yeah, these people really just don't care. And that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. I went home and was doing my usual complaining routines of my husband. And if anyone knows my husband, if you see him, count yourself lucky. Okay? He's a very reserved and quiet kind of guy. So when he said to me, I think you should run, it it really hit home with me because I knew that that was going to put him out of his comfort zone, but he was saying it, you know? And so it really hit home with me. And after hearing it from people who I trusted and respected, I was like, okay, maybe I will do this. And that's what got me to run. I'm just a mom and a community member who got sick of being ignored. And, you know, you hear the phrase, what radicalized you? They did.
It's funny. It's I feel like that's more common than people realize, is that people just get kind of shoved down and shoved into a corner and put off, and then they just sort of like are like, enough is enough. And I love that story. It's very compelling. And okay, so we've been made aware of a lot of the issues, right? Like not having a budget is kind of wild. The spending seems to be, at least based on the research that I've seen and done, it seems to be a little out of control. The support for teachers is not necessarily there. How do you, as a candidate, anticipate, because I'm sure we will anticipate, and then there will be like the realities of what we can actually do. How do you anticipate being able to go in and bridge these gaps between like lack of teacher support and huge budget deficits? Because some people would say those are at odds things.
Right. They are in a sense, but they're also in the same vein, right? So I think the first thing that has to happen is you cannot fix a problem until you face it, point blank. If you don't know where your money's going, you can't redirect it to solve an issue. So we have to have a full forensic audit done, not by like our internal auditor, not by the local people. It has to be somebody, hopefully like out of state, to come in and do a full forensic audit. Forensic means it's legally binding, like it's a legal document, and it needs to be published to the public so the public can see where every single penny has gone. It needs to be easy to understand and easy to use, which they post a lot of different kinds of budgets online. If you find them, it's not easy to use them. So, and even in like one of the most recent board workshops, they were talking about, oh yeah, we posted the budgets online. And even the board members sitting up there were like trying to find it. And they're like, yeah, I can't find it. So like when we hide these things, that's another, you have to ask that question. Why are we hiding it? Why are we making it so hard? It should be like the first thing at the top of like the splash page. Like, here's our budget, like check it out, right? So we have to know where the money's going. So once we know where it's going, we can start making very specific, judicious decisions on how to get that money redirected back to our classrooms. Now, having been in board meetings, I have things right off the top of my head that go, we don't need that. Like over $250,000 on lobbyists. Like that is just silly. I've never understood why we're spending money on that. We should not be renewing those contracts. We have 2 government relations employees, 7 elected board members, and an elected superintendent. That is 9 people who can lobby. So to me, to spend another $250,000 for 3 more, wasteful. And when I just, every time I see these things come up on the board meetings and for approval, my brain immediately goes to how many teachers is that? How many paraprofessionals is that? Immediately, because I'm a substitute teacher. So I'm in our classrooms. I see exactly how this plays out when we don't have the support. I've experienced it firsthand. It is a danger, not just to our teachers and our staff, to our kids, because they're the ones who ultimately pay the price for this mismanagement. And so when I see these things come up, my brain immediately starts going, okay, I know a new teacher is $54,500. We've got over $250,000. Oh my gosh. And I know I can usually get like 2 paraprofessionals for the cost of 1 teacher. Oh my gosh. Like I immediately go like that. When I see pictures of a human resources department during the holidays, this is happy holidays from our human resources department, they can barely fit in the boardroom. My brain immediately starts counting, and I lost track at like 70 something because it was so tiny. I'm like counting all the people. And I think, why do we need that many people in our human resources department for our school district? I mean, I worked for a Fortune 500 company that had a tenth of that for an entire 9 state region. It just doesn't make any sense. We're not making, they call themselves conservatives. I don't know what definition of conservative they've read, but they're not making conservative financial decisions by any stretch of the imagination. And that has an impact. There are impacts to our community when they do that. And that's how we lose 475 educators and arts programs and special needs support. That's how we lose it, because we're doing stupid stuff with our money.
Yeah. It's weird to think that there are board members that truly believe, either in message alone or in themselves, that they are upholding the best for the students. And this is only my personal opinion, so
everybody gets an opinion, right?
Yeah. It's super interesting to me to watch the belief that truly what is in the best interest of the students and the community at large is being done, while the deficit continues to climb, but while the teacher feedback is extremely not good. What are some of the things that you're hearing from the teachers, and being a substitute teacher yourself, that you've experienced?
I mean, it's not good. So teachers need support staff in order to do what is being asked of them. And teachers are being asked to do so much more than they've ever had to do before. And I'm not talking like over the past 10 or 20 years. I'm talking over the past 3 to 5 years. We've more than doubled the teacher workload. Not doubled their money, that's for sure. Can't pay them anymore, right? We have more than doubled their workload. We've asked things of them that they have not even been trained to do. And we have not provided any more support for them. So when we see our educational outcomes suffering for that, it's directly related to each other. So teachers, here's just to paint a picture, right? Teachers have seen increased class sizes. The state actually has recommended class sizes. Now, if there's anything that the infrastructure has done, is they have decided to lobby for things like not being fined when they go over class sizes, or making sure that the fines are low. So nowadays they don't even get fined if they're over the suggested class sizes. There's no repercussions when they go over the suggested class sizes. None at all. So why honor them, right? Why not stuff 40 high schoolers into a classroom because you can with one teacher, right? That's a lot. In the classroom that I did a long-term sub in, I did almost for the first 9 weeks of school, I had 23 kindergartners. So if anybody's ever been in a room full of 5 and 6-year-olds, 23 is a lot, right? I've got 2 of them in my house. And I thought, how bad can it be? Oh my gosh, let me tell you, it can be alarming, because all of them have a very different personality. They all learn differently. They all need different needs. And that's where we run into issues where we don't have support. When you have kids who need that extra support, they need behavioral health, mental health, or something like that, we don't have the resources in our schools to help those kids until maybe 9 weeks into the school year or more. So the kid suffers, their education suffers, because we're having behavioral issues in our classroom. All of the other 22 kids suffer because their education is being disrupted. My first Friday, I got beat up by a 5-year-old. Yeah. And I had to wait for what felt like forever, because our poor dean of students is one person running around a whole school where that situation is happening in multiple classrooms. If we had a paraprofessional in every classroom, that dean of students would be available for the most severe issues, and the paraprofessional would be able to assist in a behavioral situation. But we don't have those resources. and we've eliminated mental health professionals across our district. So now you have mental health professionals covering multiple schools. So when you have a kid who needs a mental health professional, Godspeed, good luck. Because when will they get to your school? And then they have a case overload. They get burnout. And that's what happens. And that's why teachers leave. And that's why mental health professionals and paraprofessionals leave. They don't just even leave our school district, they leave the profession because they were burnt out. So we don't just ruin it for Lee County, we ruin it for our whole state, and we ruin it for our country because we burnt somebody out who had a passion enough to go to school for it, right? And learn how to do it and start working in that field. And we burned them out because we don't provide the resources that they need to be effective in their job.
Oof.
Yeah. It's awful.
It's really intense to think about it because as a school district at large, I mean, I would think it would be the goal for them to support children's dreams into getting educated and becoming the professionals that they want to be. So to know that the system is actually breaking down its own, at one point maybe students that had those big dreams, that's super discouraging.
Yeah, it's self-cannibalizing, basically. And so when you see the investment in other places, you think you're only hurting us. So then they wonder why parents are pulling kids from the public school system. I mean, I've had teachers tell me, as a substitute teacher, you should take your kids to private school. And that is the most heartbreaking thing to hear. I love public schools. I'm a public school kid. I believe in the beauty that public school promises. I think it's like the ultimate American dream, the public school system, because it promises that no matter where you're from, how much money your parents make, we're going to give you the same education that we give any other kid in our country. And I think that is the base of the American dream, right? Is opportunity. Give them boots to pull the straps, right? So when you see that we're not giving a full boot, like it's missing a sole of the shoe, well, that's not really going to work out very well. And we don't give our kids that level playing field. And I mean, statistically, parents will pull their kids out of our public schools, but they come back because public schools have to service every kid no matter what. We don't get to say, hey, we don't have the resources for your autistic child. So you can waive your right to have those resources if you want to keep them in our school. That's not how public schools operate. That's how the other schools operate. So we have to help everyone. And that's what is great about public schools. I don't like to even say we have to. We get to. We have that honor of making sure that every kid, no matter their circumstances, gets a quality public education. So when you see them leaving, you have to ask why. No $64,000 mailing out to a bunch of retired people with no kids in our school district is going to solve that problem. Of course, we need to be competitive with the school choice options, but we cannot be competitive if we don't invest in the classroom. So it'd be one thing if we had thriving classrooms, thriving education system, and then they were like, let's get some lobbyists to put some icing on the cake. That's a whole different situation. But we have teachers barely keeping their heads above water, students who are so many years behind, it seems like it will never catch up. And they're like, let's go get some lobbyists. And while we're at it, let's take a trip to DC. Why not, right? What are you thinking? And I think of it, again, I'm a mom, right? I was a stay-at-home mom for many years, and it was one of the hardest jobs I have ever worked. And I worked, so I've been working since I was 11, and I've done some hard jobs. Mm-hmm. And as a stay-at-home mom, I managed our home budget, right? And sometimes you have to make difficult decisions when you're a one-income family. And so you say, well, what are the luxuries that we have? Oh, well, my $40 Peloton membership, I think, is going to have to go, right? There's one tank of gas I got, right? Because I cut out my Peloton membership. You have to say, what are the luxuries? What are those things? Yeah, they're great. It's nice. It's lovely to be able to ride the Peloton bike at home, right? Maybe I actually have to sell that Peloton bike because we need that money. Maybe we have to trade in our vehicle and get an affordable vehicle that's paid off so that I don't have a monthly car payment, so that I can afford what I need to afford for my kids and my family, right? You have to make those kinds of hard decisions because you have to keep the priority on your family. The schools, the priority should be the schools. But it seems we have priority on those luxuries, on the pretty, shiny things that seem great. And yeah, I agree. Our superintendent should be able to make difficult decisions. I 100% agree with our superintendent. I just don't think we're making difficult decisions. I think we're making wrong decisions.
I think that makes a ton of sense. I am a product of Lee County Public Schools and a huge advocate for them. I had an amazing educational experience with them. And in spite of being a single mom that is an entrepreneur that barely has any time, that often grapples with those same budgetary decisions, considered pulling my kids out of school. And even though they're at a great school, but there are ways that my son doesn't get, everything that he needs just from like a curriculum challenge perspective, which I have gotten so much more insight on just sitting in this room to know the complexities that are serving all of the children, that I can then bring back to him. But having all of that and still saying I might take that voucher and I might try to homeschool my kid because it doesn't like and I'm in support of the Lee County's public school system, and I'm in a great district. So for me to be considering that, it has to be pretty bad. I can't even imagine parents that are dealing with special needs children, or just like any number of the issues that they're dealing with. So really interesting perspective from you on that. And I think that it's very unique. And I love the comparison of household budgetary expenses and making hard decisions, because I don't know that the people that are sitting on the school board now have the same perspective or life that people that have to do that are. And I think one of my biggest takeaways of all these interviews is people that actually live inside the public school district and live the kind of lives that the families inside the Lee County Public School District are living are the people that can make the best decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point to make. I don't really know their perspectives, but I can speak to mine. Like I grew up in a house where we were just really poor. Like we didn't have a lot of money. And I can instantly, when I talk to people and they tell me their views, I can immediately suss out, like, you have never actually been poor, have you? Like, because I grew up in a family where we had to make decisions that we didn't have a home phone and we had no cable or anything. We never purchased a computer. My mom had one at her business when she opened up her business. I did my high school papers on a typewriter because that's the kind of money we had, and my parents were always very open about what they were able to do for us and what they were not able to do for us. And I learned a lot about what their budgeting process was like. I remember my dad sitting down at like the kitchen table and like looking at the checkbook and balancing the checkbook and like talking me through how he had to pay bills and how some bills we couldn't afford, and we all worked. Like I told you, I started working at 11 years old. It wasn't because I thought it was fun. It was because we needed money in our house, so if we wanted to have something as a kid, go out and work and for it and earn it. And we learned at an early age how to budget. And I'm grateful for the challenges of that because it made me a lot stronger as an adult, a lot more appreciative of the things that I did earn and the money that I was able to earn in my career. And it made me a lot smarter with my financial decisions. And I was also able, when I screwed up, I was able to figure out how to get out of it real quick because I saw how to do it, how to manage money and how to be lean on a budget. And I also have seen in my life, because of working hard, what it's like to have extra money. And you're like, oh my God, that's not for a bill. That's not for food. That's not for like that. It literally has no home. What do I do now? Oh my gosh, I can get something that I've wanted to get, right? Like, so I've seen how these things play out. And when I talk to some people, I'm like, they must have never had that experience, right? So I hear comments sometimes like we shouldn't provide lunch for all kids. I mean, I get it. You want to cut some money. I can tell you that as a poor kid who lived on reduced lunches, right? There were kids in my school whose families didn't qualify for the reduced lunches because they made more money. And I got picked on because I was a free lunch kid. I got beat up, man. I got beat up in school because I was a free lunch kid and dirt poor. Who cared about that kid, right? And then when we got to reduced lunches, oh, you think you're cool now because you're on reduced lunches? And it was like always a thing to pick up. So I understand the premise of saying, oh, well, if people are making more money, we shouldn't be paying for their kids' lunch. But I don't think they understand how that plays out in a kid's world and how kids are othered because of that. So I think there's plenty of other places in our budget that we can look to cut before we do that, Like if things are real bad, that's on the table, right? But I think, again, lobbyists and $64,000 mailers are standing in our way of silliness like that, right? So you have to come at it from that perspective. And if you have people who have that like lean perspective, it gives a new like view of how they're doing things.
Yeah. And honestly, I consider myself someone that does have a lean perspective, but I also am someone that understands how a child's metabolic health contributes to how they show up in the classroom and how their brain can learn too. And I'm also someone that has struggled enough with her budget where I've been like, shuffling around to put food on the table for my kids. So I don't know that I'll ever, even as someone that's lean in my budgetary ideals, ever be like free lunch should be taken away. No, I love that. I think it needs to stay. And I know this is not my podcast episode, but I just no.
It's a shocking thing when I hear
it. It is.
And I understand where it comes from. I do. And I respect the idea, of course, of here's an idea, here's how we can save some money. But I think that there are other places we can go to first before we get there.
Definitely. Without a doubt. I've heard stories of embroidered polo shirts and marketing companies and consultants. And like, I think that there are lots of places and opportunities to cut that budget if that budget exists, which apparently right now.
I would love to see it. I would love to. I honestly do. I would like to see where we're at because again, you can't fix the problem until you face it. And like in any household budget, you hear stories about people just going wild and running up credit and it's because they don't even look at their bank accounts, right? Like there are people who, like I follow Dave Ramsey, right? And you'll hear people call into his show and they're like, I just don't look at my bank account and I don't look at my credit cards until it's bad. Well, that's how it gets bad, it's because you're not looking at it. And I know it can seem very daunting and overwhelming to look at the ugly, but you have to. Like you have to look at the ugly and you have to say, oh gosh, we've really been making some bad decisions. You have to own those decisions and say, these were not good financial choices. We screwed up, right? So here's how we're going to fix it going forward. We're not going to order Uber Eats 6 nights a week. We are not going to have gym memberships where we don't even go to the gym. We are not going to, you have to say we're not going to do these things because those are damaging to our budget. And that's how we get into this mess. So we are going to regroup. We're not going to use credit cards. We're going to cut them up, right? and we're going to pay those off because we're not going to that gym anymore and we're not Uber eating. So we'll have that money to pay off that debt. And then once we pay off that debt, what is the plan to do with that money so that we don't find ourselves back in this dumb position where we can't afford to live? And so the district needs to do that. Government in general needs to do that. They need to say, how do we cut back, redivert the funds, and then make sure we're not in this mess again. And that's what I'm missing when I go to the school board workshops or the school board meetings. I'm missing that piece. In fact, I'm concerned. Like with this $92 million deficit, their CFO is saying this is not going to go away anytime soon. And I think people are missing that piece. Like they hear $92 million, they hear the cuts that were made, they hear that they moved over from the capital budget to cover it. We're not hearing that they expect to continue to have this debt and continue to have this problem. And my question to that is why? Why aren't we making severe enough changes so that this stops today and we don't end up here next year or the year after or the year after? And this is something I've seen coming as well. I've seen these projections where they're like, every other school district is losing kids, but we're not. How long did you think that was going to happen? You saw the trends of every school here in the state of Florida, and you thought you were special. You thought you were special? Come on, man. Yeah. So to me, there's been no accountability for the poor decisions. I don't know any job that anyone on this earth can work and lose $92 million and be completely okay and have other people fired because of it. Like, are you kidding me? So bad decisions were made, yes. But where have we made the accountability and what are we changing so that next year we're not having this conversation, which I fully expect to be happening next year. 100%. I'm here to predict it now. Everyone in the world.
You heard it here first.
There will be a deficit next year that they'll pretend they'll be like, what? Oh my God. And it's because they didn't make any changes. They just band-aided it.
Moving forward, what does full transparency and accountability look like for the new school board that gets elected? And if you are elected, what would you like to do differently?
So that's a lot of pieces. It's a lot of things because there's got to be transparency and accountability in many realms, right? So financially, I talked about doing the full forensic audit. And then I think it's a full review of every single contract that we have, every single contractor that we're doing business with, and finding where do we need to make changes, right? That has to happen. And that cannot happen solely by the board. So we need to bring back something that was eliminated, which is these community advisory boards. So they got rid of all of those except for like DAC and SAC. And we have one advisory committee in place to watch the ISOC, to watch over the half-cent sales tax. That's it. Years ago, we used to have advisory committees. So we have to bring those back, and they have to be different than they were before. Used to be, it was just like your buddies that you got put on the board. We need subject matter experts, real community members who are invested in making true change. And I've met so many on the campaign trail that give me hope that there are people in our community who have no reason to be invested in our public schools, but are. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And we need to engage those people on these committees to help make informed decisions, because there are only 7 board members and there's a lot of work to do. There really is. So we have to engage the community in helping with that work and in helping communicate that, right? So my opinion for board members, I've seen the city of Fort Myers do this, and I think that they're excellent communicators and open door people. They have ward meetings. So I live in Ward 6 with Darla Bonk. She always has a monthly ward meeting. And I've never understood why our board members don't have that. So our board members should have district meetings, right? We have 5 different districts for the school board. We should have district meetings. And if you're an at-large candidate or at-large board member, you can rotate through and going to all of the other districts and talking to them, right? And in those meetings, they bring in staff from the city in the ward meeting. So we can bring in staff from the district. And it cannot be this scripted town hall nonsense. It cannot be that way. It cannot be submit your questions ahead of time. We'll answer the ones we like. And there is no follow up. That's not how we have communication. That's not communication. We should have a conversation with our community. What's happening in this community? What are your concerns? What are your issues with your kids' schools? And what do we need to focus on? And what are your ideas to fix that? I mean, I can't tell you how many teachers, parents, community members who have offered up their ideas to me that have enlightened me so much because I don't have all the answers. I don't know all the things. Yeah, I'm really good at managing a budget, but I don't know curriculum particulars. So when a teacher comes up to me and is like, hey, I have an idea to save the district $5 million on ELA curriculum in the high school level, I'm like, what? Tell me more. That should be happening, right? We should be listening to the people doing the job. That's also transparency, right? When it comes to families, I've experienced this as myself. My son has been in 2 different schools, and the communication styles with those schools are vastly different. And I won't say that one was superior than the other, but neither of them were the most impactful, I don't think. And I experienced this in my own kid's school today. Like, there's an apathy among parents. And it's hard to engage parents and get them involved in their kids' school. And I know a lot of that is that our parents are working 2 and 3 jobs, right? And statistically, many of our families are single parent households or single grandparent households or single aunt or uncle households or single caretaker households. So they are doing all of the things. So we have to find a way to bridge that gap and make it easy for those families to be involved with their kids. Make it easy for the mom who works 3 and 4 jobs, who has their kid in before care and aftercare because of it, who when they go get their kid at aftercare right at 6 o'clock on the dot because they're running from their last job, and they come home and they're feeding their kid and they're still going to do some boss babe stuff at home after dinner, something for them to fit in 15 minutes that's easy for them to engage with their kids and talk about the school day and talk about what they're learning. We need to do a better job at that. What that is, I don't even know. Because again, I don't have the answers. But I want to hear from those parents and those families and say, what would work for your family to keep you engaged with your kid every day? Something you could do every day. And a communication between you and the school and your kid, because it's a partnership and kids don't thrive until it becomes a partnership, right? So we have to do that, and that will increase the transparency. And then in general with the community, the propaganda department's got to go, man. It's mind-boggling. It's almost like they're trying to piss everyone off. I don't understand how it happens or who's in control of it. I don't know, but it's bad, man. Like the communication put out on social media is so out of touch with our community. Like just so out of touch. So we need people who are in touch with our community. The communication has to change. It can't be, oh my gosh, we have to get rid of 475 educators. And then you see the next day that they're having a hiring event. Like, what is going on, right? And so we have this weird communication that has to change. If we have to announce something that is real ugly, because let's not pretend that there's not going to be things that are controversial or things that not everybody's happy about. There's no world in which that exists, right? But we have to approach it from a very compassionate and human stance, being honest, admitting our faults, admitting why we have to make certain decisions, and communicating that clearly and openly, and being open to follow-up communication, right? Being open to saying, okay, we have this really hard decision we're having to make in our district, whatever decision it is. We're going to have community town halls so that you guys can talk to us and maybe even just vent on us and tell us how mad you are about it, right? Having more than one board meeting a month would be great. I mean, my God, we pay them as much as an entry-level teacher. I don't understand why they have one meeting a month. It's insane to me. And then some of them are talking about going on Zoom. Are you kidding me? because we'd like to spend time with our families. And sometimes it falls on the day of a family birthday. Hello. Hi, friend. You did sign up for that. Like when I decided to do this, I knew this was going to take time away from my family and kids. Like, yes. There's going to be times that you're going to have to miss. That's what people do in life. Like, I had my birthday last week and my husband was in Chicago for work. He missed my entire birthday. He flew in and landed like literally 45 minutes after my birthday ended. That's how life works. Like, we're just going to go celebrate it tonight. Like, get over it. Move on. Zoom in for my brother in Christ. No. So like, those are the things that create that block to the transparency and communication. So when you invite people in, when you allow people to say what they have to say, even when you disagree with it, even when you know what you're doing is the right thing, but you respect people in this community enough to listen to them and let them tell you their version and their side, that's going to go a long way. And you need to do that more often, not less. And you have to do it in earnest. So that has to change. And those are the things I will be focusing on when I'm on the board.
The mics are suspended, but I want you to take it and drop it a little bit. Okay, so that was amazing. We'll say, we'll do like the Jerry Springer final thought. What do you want to say to the voters of Lee County to encourage them to make the best change for parents, for teachers, for the students, and get more transparency and accountability?
So I'll say this. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. For many years, we've been doing the same thing over and over again. We elect these establishment candidates, and I don't even want to say it's a partisan thing because it is not. There are people of different parties, and then there's establishment people. And these establishment people are not invested in our community. They're invested in whatever it is. They're invested in power, money, a future career. I don't know. But it's not what they're running for. They're invested in something else. And this is just a stepping stone. So our community has to start asking a serious question about the people that are running and if they're invested in our community. You have to say, does it make sense for someone to be on our board when their own children aren't even in our schools? Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? They have different priorities. So go do those priorities. It's fine. It's fine to have different views and different priorities. But right here is not the place for you, right? So in any job, when somebody's interviewing, you have to find out if they're a match for that role. I hired many people in my last career. And there were times where the person sitting in front of me was very skilled, very intelligent, great, but not for the role. And I would tell them, this is just not the thing for you. And they didn't like that, right? Because they had their heart set on it. But I would say, you're going to thank me later. This is a job that's going to make you miserable, and you're not going to be as effective as you could be. And I think the voters in Lee County have to do that. They have to actually say, put the partisan politics aside, right? In fact, the people who encourage that, big red flag, right? The people who are coming out and trying to divide us because somebody registered as a Republican or somebody registered as a Democrat or a Libertarian or an Independent or an MPA, those are the people who are the problem, right? They're trying to divide us, and we see this without our country. We should be able to have a conversation no matter how we registered to vote, right? We should be able to respect each other as Americans no matter how we registered to vote, right? So when you see people dividing, that's your first red flag, right? And then you have to say, okay, are they the right person, the right fit for this job? Do they have the bandwidth to do it? Are they committed to doing the hard work? Are they the kind of person who can admit there's a problem, who can admit if they did something wrong? Are they the kind of person who can say, whoop, we screwed that up and let's fix it? And if they're not, that's not the kind of person we need in charge of our community, because that's what a leader does. A leader assesses things. A leader makes decisions. And a leader, when wrong, will admit it and fix it. And so we see this cycle again where we just vote people in because, oh, they seem real nice. Oh, they're so pretty. They look real good, right? Oh, well, they're registered with my party, right? But are we really asking, is that person the best fit for the role? Maybe they're in a better role somewhere else, right? Maybe they need to go do something different that fits them better. But is it right for this? So that's what they have to ask themselves, the voters in Lee County. And I'll tell you, this is what I'm here for. I'm very passionate about public education. It means a lot to me, and I'm invested in it. My 3 kids are in our public schools, and to the teachers who told me, because they love me, that I should take my kids to private school, I said, never. I would never leave the public school system because I believe in it, and when you run away from something, it never gets fixed. The people who turncoat are turncoats. I am no turncoat. I believe in staying right here and fixing it, right? I mean, right? Like, what kind of parent would you be if you just were like, oh, this is too hard, I'm out of here, right? But parents do it, right? So that's not the kind of person I am. When I find something I care about, I stick with it, and I work my butt off. That's how I've been this campaign. I worked my butt off this whole campaign. I mean, before I came here, I was out canvassing in the heat for a few hours, right? So if you don't have somebody who's willing to do the work, you got to ask that. And I know that I am a hard worker. And I'll tell you this, man, I'll outwork anybody. I'll run circles around them. I've been doing it since I was 11. So I'm not ashamed to admit that I may not be as educated as somebody or had the same experience, but I will outwork people tenfold. And that goes a long way. And it served me well in life. So I think I am the best person for the job because of that, not because of somebody's not good enough or something, but I just think I'm better because I will work harder and I will put my heart into it. So that's what I'll leave in the final thought.